Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Every moment is sacred, where we interweave meditation and healing into everyday life. I am your host, Rain Elizabeth Stickney. Now, let us begin. Hey, it is so wonderful to be here with you. You know that I am late in sharing this wonderful, fun-filled, light-filled conversation with you. Today, I am introducing Lydia Gilman, who is a mother, a highly sensitive person, and the creator of Love to a T. Love to a T is a store that shares messages of love and inspiration with the intention of spreading the ripples of love to a world desperately in need of it. Check out her store. Seriously, I have a wonderful shirt of hers that says Radiate Love. And when I wear that shirt, I feel overjoyed because all I want to do is radiate love. I began this introduction by saying that I'm late. I am late. My intention is to share with you meditations on Tuesday and conversations on Thursday. And then guess what? My son got sick. I got behind. And even though I have these lovely conversations like this one with Lydia pre-recorded, the editing process takes time, and creating an introduction like this takes a moment of inspiration and readiness. So I am so sorry for my poor time management skills. I am always working on this. And if you know me personally, you know that I love to be punctual. I am often late. And I keep a good sense of humor about it because presence is where it's at. May this episode be reaching you in divine timing. May these words from Lydia reach you at a time when you most need them. Lydia is passionate about helping people realize their full potential and getting out of their way to do the amazing work they are put on earth to do. She also has a podcast, which I love, called Stepping into Purpose. And on her show, she shares stories about people doing exactly that. And I can attest to the guests that she gathers together. These people are so well spoken. They share so much meaning and value about the work they're doing and the perspective they hold about humanity. Listen in to Stepping into Purpose. Today on Every Moment is Sacred, you get to hear Lydia and me in conversation about highly sensitive people. I am a highly sensitive person, as is Lydia, and her two children are highly sensitive. Lydia especially focuses on helping parents of highly sensitive children to understand and embrace the unique challenges and joys of raising highly sensitive people. She loves to build connection through love and understanding. Okay, Lydia is all about love. And a funny thing about Lydia that you'll find right off in our conversation is that she worked on the set in a couple of different ways. She worked on Xena Warrior Princess. Okay, she was the stand-in double for Xena's sidekick, Gabrielle. I just love imagining Lydia on the set of film, and she just has a world of expertise in the industry, and I am forever inspired by Lydia. It's so fun to get to know people and have these surprises about who they have been and how who they have been informs who they are today. And you get some of that in this conversation with Lydia and me. Connecting Xena Warrior Princess and Lydia and me and highly sensitive people all over the globe, high sensitivity is a superpower. This is something that Lydia and I highlight together. I fully believe it. If you are a highly sensitive person, embrace your sensitivity as a superpower it is. If you need some support for your high sensitivity, reach out to Lydia. Her contact information is in the show notes. You can also search for her store, Love to a T. You can look for her on social media, Love to a T, or search for her name, Lydia Gilman with 2 L's. You may also come to meditation with me. I love teaching meditation. If you've been listening to this show, you know that I am passionate about meditation. I practice, I teach, I've been meditating my whole life. I teach online, I teach in person. So here are 3 ways you can connect with me. Actually, I can think of 4 or 5 ways. Let me just tell you how to connect with me around meditation. Number 1, come to my free online meditation gathering on Thursday, February 1st, 12 p.m. Eastern. If you want the replay, sign up. You don't have to be there in person. You can just get the replay. But if you're there in person, you get to help co-create a meditation with me, which is such a joy and so much fun. I've been getting great engagement on these free events. You may become a member of my year-long meditation program. The deadline to buy in for the entire year is January 31st. We meet on Thursdays for 40 weeks throughout the year. We've already had 2 meetings, so you have 38 weeks left. It's still a great deal. So email me meditation@rainelizabeth.org. I'll give you all the details. You can also click the link in the show notes for either the free meditation, no strings attached, or the paid offer, which is a year of meditation with me and a sacred group of people who are there week after week. And so we build emotional safety. We get to learn and grow with each other throughout the months and the weeks. We get to dive deep into our spiritual practice. I share tidbits in every session about breath work, about what meditation is, about what meditation isn't, about how to live a life of meditation, or just dip in when you want to, the values and benefits, and also contraindications. There is a wealth of knowledge in the field of meditation, and not only is it an ancient practice, talk about proof of concept, really. But the science around meditation these days proves a lot of the ancient theories about why people have been meditating for generation and generation, handing it down through to tradition, multiple traditions, not one tradition. I am eclectic. And so I meditate in a way that works for me. And I teach you to work with yourself in meditation in a way that is true to your body, mind, heart, and spirit. Okay. So you have the free offer, you have the paid offer. If you're in Vermont, come meditate with me in person. That would be so fun. I teach at the Charlotte Library on Saturdays, 9 to 10 a.m. every Saturday, which is so exciting because you can just pop in when you want to. It's a free class. Occasionally, the library is closed for a holiday, or there could be some circumstance that comes up where there's a missed meeting. And so you can look at the library's website, search for the Charlotte Library in Vermont, or you can go to my website, rainelizabeth.org. Okay, so you have the free online offer, the online paid offer, the free in-person offer. Later this year, I will host a meditation retreat. So again, just email me, get on the list for that. I will provide all the information as the details collect themselves and make themselves known. Meditation@rainelizabeth.org. 2 other ways, very simple, to engage in meditation with me is listen to this podcast. I have over 100 episodes, and many of them are guided meditations. So enjoy, pick and choose, find the one or the ones you like best. I am also on Insight Timer. There are just a few meditations there right now, but you can go to insighttimer.com. Maybe you have the app. It's another free offer, and you can listen to those meditations as often as you like. As always, 5-star ratings, reviews, sharing with friends, all welcome. I am overjoyed to be a podcaster, to be a meditation teacher and healer. I am happy to be here with you today. And without further ado, Here is my beloved friend, beautiful soul, graceful person of this world, Lydia Gilman. Hey, Lydia.
Hi, Rain. How exciting to be here with you.
Oh, likewise. I am so excited to sit in presence with you and to learn more about highly sensitive people and just bask in your glow. I really love connecting with you.
It's completely mutual. And yeah, I couldn't think of anyone I'd rather sit with right now. So, yay.
You have a podcast called Stepping into Purpose.
Yes, yes.
Tell us about that and how it's going.
It's been my big sort of project of the year. And it's quite interesting. I never really had any intention of having a podcast. And then I sort of got swept up by Kathy Heller, who is a mentor of us both, really, isn't she? And
Mhm.
she's got a beautiful podcast. And yeah, she's so convincing. And I need a podcast. And, it wasn't so much for the external point of it, but I think a big part of it has been for me to really find my own voice. I'm someone who has never really liked the sound of my own voice. So that's
Mm,
a bizarre thing from the start. It's like, oh, podcasting, you've got nothing else to hang on to. So it's been a big growing journey for me in that way, but also just finding my voice and expressing myself. And with other amazing people has been the best way,
mhm,
connecting with you've been on the podcast and just other people like you. And it's the most delicious thing for me is to connect with other like-minded women. Actually, they've all been women, and that hasn't really entirely been conscious, but it's the
mm,
way it's worked out. And it's been, yeah, such a beautiful journey. So I'm nearly
mhm.
at the first, year one on January the 11th. So
Oh, coming
yeah,
up.
coming up. It's been a great ride. Yeah.
Mhm. And so we're recording this in December, and our episode, Lydia, will probably air sometime in January. So it might be right around
Yeah.
your anniversary, your podcasting
Yay.
birthday.
Yeah. It's exciting. And I've seen other people who started this journey with me celebrating that. And it really is a big achievement because it's a lot of work, and not just physical work, but also you're really putting yourself out there and you're being vulnerable. And yeah, I think it's beautiful. It's been an amazing journey.
Mhm. You have such a lovely show. And I understand that you're not only on the podcasting platforms, but also on YouTube.
Yes, I decided to put it on YouTube as well because I'm quite a visual person and I really like to
Mm,
see who's talking, so I decided to put it out there as well, just as another thing as well. But
mhm,
I like just listening to podcasts. I like doing both, and I like putting a podcast in while I'm doing all my busy household work and doing the
mhm,
dishes and
mhm,
cooking the dinner and that sort of thing. So, yeah,
mhm.
I like to have the option. But yeah, my background is more with film and video. I worked in the film industry for many years, front and behind the camera, actually. So
Mhm,
I'm quite comfortable and familiar with that side of things. So actually, doing the podcast was more not risky, but more of a stretch for me, I think, only
mhm.
having the voice.
Wow. So this is so interesting. I actually didn't know that you were in film before. And
Yeah.
so one of the things we're going to talk about, actually, the main thing is about being a highly sensitive person and your experience and expertise in that area. So let's combine those and imagine in the film industry, how was being a highly sensitive person a value? What was your superpower there?
Well, I know that it had its challenges, especially when I worked behind the camera. I worked on a program called Xena Warrior Princess. Have you heard of that? It's an
I
American
have.
show.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And Hercules. And I'm from New Zealand, and they were actually filmed right down in New Zealand completely, like two full-time productions. Hercules and Xena were on at the same time. So I sort of was on both, but mainly Xena. And I was the stand-in and body double for Gabrielle, who was like Xena's sidekick, because I'm quite petite and I'm like not 6 foot like Lucy Lawless, who plays Xena. But yeah, her sidekick called Gabrielle. And yeah, that was in my early 20s. And it was a lovely job to have, actually. I learned so much about the technical side, which as an aspiring actor, it was really, really helpful. But working those, it was a standard week was 60 hours. But
Wow.
I'd often do overtime, because I'd get there before the actor. Because this is funny, I'd actually drive her trailer like a camper van.
Uh-huh.
The stand-ins and body doubles were like responsible for driving, because everywhere she was going to be, I was going to be. So I'd
Okay.
drive that to and from the set each day and park it up, and then she'd come in and get dressed and have makeup and stuff. So yeah, it was interesting. So I'd often have to be there at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and then leave sort of 8 at night. So it was full on. I mean, it was really just, I did that for 3 years, and it was really just, be at work, eat and sleep, and laundry on the weekends. You really didn't want any socializing. And for myself anyway, and I think that probably is because of the highly sensitive element, on
Mhm.
weekends, I didn't really want to see anyone aside from my family. I was still living at home actually with my parents at that stage. I was about 21, I think. And yeah, you'd almost get, I remember discussing this with one of my colleagues, that you'd actually get sort of a bit angry if someone showed up unexpectedly, like on a Sunday afternoon or something. She's like, oh, I've got so much to do, and, I don't want to see anyone right now. So it
Mhm.
shows how out of balance it kind of is. But
Mm.
it's really that thing, yeah, where you really need time to yourself. And if you're doing long hours like that, as an introvert, and highly sensitive. I'm kind of an extroverted introvert, actually. I'm not a full introvert, but yeah, I
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
need my time to myself to recharge.
Mhm.
So yeah, I didn't know that I was a highly sensitive person back then, but yeah, it all makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. What is a highly sensitive person?
Well, I mean, quite a new discovery to me. It made so much sense once I realized that that's what it was, but that's what I was. And all my family are as well. My dad is, my husband, and both of
Oh,
our
wow.
kids are highly sensitive. And it's a personality trait. I mean, it's not a diagnosis. So you can't be diagnosed. It's slightly different from autism or something like that. But some of the factors are sort of the same, similar. But yeah, I think we're actually wired differently, and we have more neuroreceptors and transmitters than the average person. And
Mhm. Mhm.
we're just wired to feel more. I think we're more sensitive to external stimuli. We're more sensitive to other people's emotions, and our own emotions feel really deep empathy.
Mm.
It's painful sometimes. I know you're a highly sensitive person as well.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
it can be quite painful if you sort of let yourself go there too much, because there's a lot of joy in the world, but there's also a lot of suffering. And I think
Mhm.
it can be very painful. And sometimes you just sort of have to protect yourself from that pain,
Mhm.
if there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
you're right. I'm right here in it with you, being a highly sensitive person. And I love hearing your definition because I want our listeners to know what a highly sensitive person is and give some context. But also, we all might define this personality trait a little differently. And where there are some mainstays, like we do tend to feel more than other
Yeah.
people, and we have more input coming in that's available to us. And so on a bad day, it can be very overwhelming and difficult. And on a good day, we get extra information. It isn't that the information isn't available to other people. It's just that it is more readily available to those who are sensitive to it.
And you often don't have a choice. It just comes to, and you'll get feelings. I mean, it's hugely beneficial. And I think it sort of goes back to, because even animals are highly sensitive as well. And it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
those, if you think of a herd of, let's say, deer or something like that, and the ones on the outside who'll be protecting the herd or whatever, and sort of just be more sensitive to what's going on, any danger, and they pick up those sort of, yeah, those vibes, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
almost from others. But I mean, it shows up in lots of different ways. And it's funny because it's hard for in some ways for me to be objective about it because it's how I am. And like I say, all of my immediate family members that way. So it sort of just seems normal, but then I realize it isn't. But there's perfectionism shows up quite a lot. Yeah, a need for solitude, to have time to yourself to unwind. Yeah, deep empathy and picking up other people's feelings, and that can be a real challenge as a child as well, because you don't always know that that's not yours, that those energies aren't yours. So I think having education around that's really, really helpful. Yeah, but I think having the knowledge out there is so helpful, because I just sort of felt the term wasn't invented when I grew up, and it was the 90s when I was, in my 20s, really, I think mid-90s, when it was coined by Elaine Aron. And she herself was a highly sensitive person, and she thought there was something wrong with her until she was a psychologist anyway, and she discovered, no, this is a thing, and it does affect up to 30% of people, 20 to 30%. It's seeming to increase in some ways. Like recent studies have shown that more people are highly sensitive. But yeah, I think that understanding makes such a difference. And when I was a child, I just thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't really understand why I was feeling so deeply. I just thought I was a bit of a strange child, and I'm sure probably my parents did as well. But yeah, I think it's very validating to understand and to teach my children about it as well.
Well, we're the same age, Lydia, and I imagine that if we met each other as children, we probably would have been friends.
I think we would have, oh, someone else like me, yay.
Yeah.
But I guess with the geographical containers, you're just surrounded by those people, all sorts, and that's what I love about these days, that we have these online, these online communities where we can meet and connect with other like-minded people. And it's beautiful. And that never existed. And our kids have that now too, as long as it's, safely entered into safely. But I think it really makes a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad we get to connect now. And one of the online communities that we're both involved in is Instagram. And so when I think of my listeners, the people who listen to this show, it's the people who listen to the show, but also the people that I connect with on Instagram or other social media platforms about the show. So something that I'm aware of in my community is that there's a deep interest in highly sensitive people, including people who, similar to you, have either parents or children or both who are highly sensitive. But the person in the middle may or may not be highly sensitive. Yeah. And so I wonder if you can speak a little bit about what is it like to be the daughter of a highly sensitive father and also to have highly sensitive children.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's only really been this year that I've realized that my father is indeed highly sensitive. And because I've been talking about it quite a lot, and he'll sort of be like, yeah, I think that's me. And then I put the pieces together. I look back, go, oh, he's totally like that, because I'm a lot like him anyway. But it explains a lot. And I think it's difficult for parents who are highly sensitive, like aside from whether or not their children are, as parents who are highly sensitive people, it's difficult. And I see my husband struggle with that and myself struggle with that at times, because you really don't get that solitude which you need on a regular basis, because you have these little people who are, and even when they're bigger people, coming in and out and just needing things all the time. And I mean, it really is important to just put your needs out there as well and really carve out time as much as you can. I know my husband's finding it a bit difficult at the moment, because we've moved to a new city where we don't have any family support, really. Whereas the last two cities we were in, we had grandparents. Our children had grandparents there. And yeah, it's a little bit hard. Like the kids are around all the time, except for school pretty much, or else the odd, time with their friends. But yeah, we don't really have that time just to ourselves. So it can be challenging. And, often Elaine Aron who's written an amazing book, which I so recommend everyone checks out. Yeah, it's called The Highly Sensitive Person, and that was her original book. And yeah, it's just so enlightening, I think. If you realize that you are a highly sensitive person, it's just brilliant. I've read it a few times, and she's got other ones as well. One's called The Highly Sensitive Parent, which is like what I'm talking
Oh,
about
okay.
if you are a parent who's highly sensitive. I mean, it's a really big thing. Yeah, just about getting that time to yourself. And, we get, as highly sensitive people, we get overstimulated or over aroused, she calls it, when there's just too much stimuli coming in. And you get very irritable when that happens. We sort of get irritated and angry. And so I see that quite a lot in our household, where we'll sort of all go, and it seems like it's the opposite of being a highly sensitive person, where you all sort of get irritated and shout, but it's really a big part of it. And especially if there's 4 of you in a household,
Oh my
it can,
gosh.
it can be quite interesting. And, sometimes I think transitions can be quite hard as well for highly sensitive people. And to get the 4 of us out of the house, it's really, really something, especially on a time schedule. So yeah, that's often a fraught environment as well.
You and I had a super fun Instagram live not too long ago, and all of you wonderful listeners can find that on either one of our feeds on Instagram. And Lydia, one of the things that you were describing in that conversation was the moments when you sometimes have to sit, or you choose to, I don't mean have to, I do mean that you choose to sit with your daughter before school if maybe she doesn't want to get out of the car, or she's having some feelings about whatever she's having feelings about. And that was so meaningful to me and to other people to hear about your experience. And just on Friday, I was sitting with my son, a little highly sensitive 9-year-old. He did not want to go to school, and he was having a lot of anxiety in a way that, where I know he's sensitive, it hadn't really happened like this before. And I felt you and your daughter. I just felt this similarity. I was thinking, oh, this is what Lydia's talking about. And so he and I actually decided not to go to school that day. But if there are parents listening who have a highly sensitive child, what are some things that work for you to be with your daughter? She's older than my son, but to be with a child in a really good and caring way and also get to school.
Well, you let me, if anyone has the answer, let me know.
Okay.
Because quite often we didn't get to school as well. I mean, it would sometimes work, but often, sometimes it's just, what I found really quite enlightening about it is sort of like letting go of the fruit of your actions, I suppose. It was really, I'd do my best, and sometimes she'd go into school and sometimes she wouldn't. And, the first couple of times when she's like, oh, I just have to go home, and I sort of went, oh, okay. So I turned around and drove home, and I started sort of crying because it's just exhausting, because even to get her, dressed and out the door and all that, so it's quite a lot. It was quite a lot just for everyone in the household to get ready and make lunches and do all those things, out the door on time, drive across town. Her school wasn't that close. It's a good sort of 20 minutes, to drive there, and would get there and, oh, are we on time? Quick, go now and you'll make the bell. And then it's like, no. And then the time goes, oh, maybe you can go now, be the next period. No. And it's just about letting go of that. And the important parts was that I'd really pour into her all my sort of learnings and wisdom, which I've picked up over the years from, different teachers and, things I've read and things. And I just sort of pour into her and sort of try and inspire her, and they were really deep conversations as well. And I think she really appreciated that. And, I just had to let go of the thing of whether or not she gets to school, because, she's had these important lessons. I've been able to give her these important sort of, not teachings, but you know what I mean? Like these learnings.
They
which
might
I
be
understand.
teachings.
Yeah, well, want to say that there are things which have definitely helped me and things I'd learned over my lifetime, and what I realize is not important and what is important. And, I look back on that. It was really just probably the last half of the year where it sort of went like this. And she was 12, it doesn't really matter how well she did at school. And amazingly, I mean, she's really bright, and amazingly, she did do pretty well in her grades anyway. So it didn't really matter. But yeah, it's hard on us, I think, as well. It is hard on us as parents because we're wondering, what can I do? Because almost like for me anyway, it's like doing the right thing, you need to go to school. This is, I've achieved my intention. You are there, you're at school. And no, that didn't happen. And they have strong wills. I mean, my children have very strong wills, and especially her. I can't make her do anything which she doesn't want to do, even when she was younger, but especially now. She's bigger than I am now. Like really, she's really bigger and stronger than I am now. And she's 13. So yeah, it's about letting go and renouncing the fruit of your action. That's really what it came down to for me. And to do your best, but at the end of the day, to just surrender it. And yeah, her path is her path, and she's got a strong vision for her life, and I can support her as much as I can, but it might not necessarily be in the way that I think it has to be.
Yeah, that is such an important lesson, that our children's lives don't need to be the way that we think they need to be. A child has a whole life that is their own, and the parent is responsible in some ways, but the life is the child's life.
Yeah. And that's become really clear. She has a very strong vision for her life, and she's hugely ambitious, a lot more ambitious than I ever was. And she will succeed. I know she'll succeed in whatever she does, and she's so determined. So really, it's just about finding the right way to support her and to offer all that I have. I mean, I feel grateful that I'm at this point in my life, and I know where to find these amazing teachers, and I've done lots of really incredible courses over the years, and she's interested in all this sort of thing. And I can give those to her, and I'll often just say, here, listen to this, and put headphones on her. And she's taking it in. She doesn't miss a beat. If you'll say her name on the other side of a room or the other side of a house, and she'll be like, what did you say about me? So she's very astute and doesn't miss a beat. So I love that I can just sort of pick out these things which I found beneficial and that I know will be beneficial for her, and just plug it in, and she'll drink it in. Because in our day, being the same age, I mean, there wasn't access to the gold. I mean, there probably was, but it wasn't as accessible, the gold and the inspiring messages and things which are so available everywhere to us now. You might have had to go into a bookshop or a secondhand bookshop or something and dig deep and try and find a little passage or something. But now that I can just put some headphones on my daughter and say, listen to this, tell me what you think, and she'll drink it in, is really, really empowering, actually.
It's so brilliant that you share these important, they are lessons, but that's also, there is some truth embedded into some of these lessons, like the kind of truth that is not dependent on the detail. And I believe, just from hearing about your daughter, I believe she can hear some of that truth that's not dependent on the detail.
Yeah. Yes. And underneath it all, she feels loved and validated and accepted, no matter what. I mean, I think that's been a really underlying message of it as well, that I'll sort of be frustrated or disappointed, or not disappointed, but, it's that thing where we're wanting her to go, where she's not doing what we intended for them to do, but, that she's loved all the same, and that I feel what she's going through, and that I was the same. I think it's a big thing that I went through a lot of the same thing. I didn't enjoy school that much either, and I did find it hard, but there was sort of maybe I just wasn't as strong to not go. I mean, it wasn't really an option for me. I think we just went, and yeah, it's just different. It's just different.
So, your father being a highly sensitive person, was he able to pick up on your sensitivity when you were growing up? Was there any sort of a resonance, or even though it wasn't defined in those terms in those years, but being a highly sensitive person, I know that it refers to something that is just innate to me. And so I'm just wondering if there was a known sensitivity between you and your father.
I guess we were always like similar, and my mother always said, yes, you're just like your father, you're so similar. But I mean, I don't think he necessarily recognized it in himself,
Mm. Hmm.
and he didn't. And probably he was more in survival mode and in a
Mm.
certain way in those earlier years when you have kids. Like I'm saying, you're working
Hmm.
hard, you've got kids, you've got all these things going on. And it's a different time, I think, too. People weren't quite as emotionally hands-on,
Hmm.
in recognizing these things as we are with our kids now.
Hmm.
So I don't think it was acknowledged in me.
Hmm.
But I'm sure my parents sort of noticed. They were sort
Hmm.
of, yeah, a bit different,
Hmm.
perhaps. Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense now. And I think it's good for him now, too, that I'm talking about it a lot and he's becoming more self-aware. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
think he was so self-aware back in those days, 70s and 80s, and
Hmm.
you're just going through life surviving
Hmm.
almost.
Hmm.
And I think it's more been in later life for him that he's becoming more self-aware and acknowledging these things. Yeah.
How lucky he is to have you.
Yeah, well, always really, but I think that's right. I think he's starting to recognize, that there are gifts in these things, and maybe I can reflect that back to him
Hmm.
now. So
Hmm.
he's really enjoying. He says he's never been happier in his life,
Oh,
than
that
he
is
is
so
now.
sweet.
Yeah, which is really nice. He's about 82, I think,
Mm.
but still really fit. And I think work can be hard, I think, for highly sensitive people. Being in a job, I see this with my husband, being in a job which doesn't necessarily work for you that well, but
Mm.
they think that's what they need to do to survive and put, food on the table and things. And there's that pressure, I think. Sometimes the husband or whatever, they get stuck in those traditional
Mhm.
roles and get stuck in it. And so I see that repeating sometimes with my husband as
Mhm.
well. And yeah, it's interesting.
I'm giggling, Lydia, because just yeah, I shared some of this with you before I hit record, but just yesterday you had sent me the link to your new store, which I hope everybody goes to. Lydia has some wonderful things for sale. And I was telling my partner and my son about you and about your store and just how lovely you are and that you specialize in highly sensitive people. And this is a follow-up from me being a guest on your show, Lydia. My partner said, "Oh, you mean like all of us?" And so he included himself in being highly sensitive, like our son and me, where when you and I spoke for your show a while back, I wasn't really sure if he would define himself in that way. But in that moment, I thought, oh my gosh, he knows. He gets that sensitivity that he also embodies. And I did not make a big deal about it, but inside I wanted to tell you.
I love that. And this is the work. It's from us going first, and recognizing
Mhm.
these things and laying it out there and being open about who we are and what we are
Mhm.
and what we do in this world. I mean, it gives them permission and they can see it in
Mhm.
themselves as well. And I think that goes
Mhm.
for even people who we don't even know. We don't even know who are listening.
Mhm.
And it's just so important. And so often people they might feel, oh, it's too vulnerable to share, or who really cares what I am anyway. But it's so
Mhm.
important because us sharing our truth helps other
Mhm.
people identify that in themselves, and especially our
Mhm.
close people, isn't and through you just being who you are, you're helping him become more self-aware and accepting of
Mhm.
who he is as a superpower. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a beautiful, highly sensitive person like you? I mean, you just
Oh.
ooze love and light, and yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And you are overflowing with love and light too. Absolutely. And
Thank
this,
you.
you're welcome. And this self awareness piece is really important because it isn't so much how we define ourselves, it's more about whether or not we're willing to really look at ourselves and learn and grow with who we are, whatever we want to call that. And for the highly sensitive person, I know from my own experience, I was sometimes dismayed. I don't think I have shared this part with you before, but sometimes as a child, and if I did, forgive me for repeating myself, but as a child, sometimes my friends would call me psychic. And I might be psychic as well. Like, I'm not going to throw that out. But my experience was simply that I was paying attention. And so I might know like which people in our school were related to which people, or who had siblings, or who had divorced parents, or what cars belonged with which families. Or it wasn't something that was anything I really thought about. It was just things that I noticed. And so sometimes in conversation, I would mention something that somebody wouldn't know that I knew about them. And they'd say, "What? Are you psychic?" And I would, even as a child, I would kind of laugh to myself, like, no, I'm just paying attention.
Wow.
And so, whatever kinds of self awareness we have about ourselves, we can always use our self awareness as a superpower because we're all paying attention to something in some direction of life. And to embody that and to allow that to inform our reality is a gift.
And I mean, we are wired differently as well. Like with those extra neurotransmitters and I mean, and the neuroreceptors, it is a thing, but I think it's also I was watching a video about octopus the other day. Someone had a pet octopus, and it was just fascinating to hear about them and how they have all, every one of their arms are just like receiving information, and it was
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. And it sort of reminds me of being highly sensitive in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting out all your feelers out there, and you're
Mm-hmm.
taking in information that you don't even really know you're taking on. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's not always beneficial, but it's just you take the good with the bad, I guess, and it can be really useful. You might feel things about people which are not so good, and it gives you that warning. And I think historically that's probably why highly sensitive people, kind of like I was saying with the
Mm-hmm.
in the animal world and things, as protectors, the protectors of the herd, and maybe they were more the protectors of the tribe as well. So yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a specific reason, but it's so important to see that in ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
see the superpower that it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about your daughter and yourself and your father and your husband, but what of your son? How does the sensitivity show up in him?
He's a Pisces, which is
Mm,
the fish sign. And I remember when both kids were born, my mother got their charts read. She had someone who read their charts. And it was interesting, it sort of said how deep they are and quite emotional. And, it sort of said even in it, you don't want to yell at them too much, just sort of, they'll get it, And so I always kind of had that feeling of him being sensitive anyway, not even really thinking before I even really thought about the highly sensitive thing of myself or any of us. So I always kind of treated him like that because he gets it. And I'd sort of probably be a little bit trying to control a little bit, like I'd sort of jump in when if my husband would get really angry. And I'll say, no, he doesn't really need that, because then my son would just get beyond upset. Like it was like a real deep level where he'd just be like devastated. I'm like, he doesn't need that, just be gentler. He'll get it.
mhm,
And so I kind of, yeah, so he definitely is highly sensitive as well as that. But yeah, he's someone who gets it, and
mm,
he takes things very deeply. And yeah, it's lovely. I never had any brothers before. I didn't really have that much to do with boys. And, when I was younger, and I'd want to have daughters rather than sons, because I didn't really know boys. But actually, I just love having that experience of being a mother to a boy. It's just, I don't know if it's just him, but it's a different relationship. And I can see that also with my husband and my daughter. It's a slightly different relationship, and it's really special. Both relationships are special, but yeah, there's a real depth there between sons and their mums.
Mm-hmm,
they
mm-hmm,
they really, yeah, are connected on quite a deep level.
mm-hmm.
So
So
yeah,
special.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really special. And yeah, he's doing really well actually. He's had start we've come to a new country this year, and he's been in two schools actually because we moved, and he was okay
Oh.
with moving, with doing that. But he's done really well, and he's been really resilient, because that's not easy to sort of move schools halfway through after only being there for 6 months and things. So I'm really proud of how he's done. And part of it was his choice as well. He was happy to do that. But yeah, he's done really well. So he's only 10, but I found when he was younger, he had a really hard time with transitioning and going to school. And he's had a bit of a bad run, to be honest, with teachers who weren't the kindest. And I think that this year we've had two beautiful teachers, so it's
Oh,
been
good.
amazing. But yeah, the last few years he had sort of more of the sort of strict, stroppy teachers who didn't really take into account who he was
Mm.
and who a lot of the children were. And it's not really a thing this year, but he used to need to go to the toilet a lot. And the teacher wouldn't let him go to the toilet, or
Oh
really,
no.
yeah, it was a real thing. This went on for most of last year, and it's funny because I'd sort of forgotten about it till right now. But it was like, well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? To
Mm-hmm.
really, no, you have to wait till lunchtime or something. Oh, but I didn't know. I didn't need to go at recess, and I do need to go now, and I can't really hold. So
Mm.
yeah, for a 9-year-old, I think that was
Mm-hmm.
hard. Yeah, and he just sort of year after year he got he got these teachers who weren't the easiest. So yeah, I'm really glad he's had a run of two amazing teachers. And I think maybe it's of course I can't say this about all teachers, but we're in Australia now, and I think just the fact that they're probably better paid and treated a bit better, they're happier, and they probably want to be there, and that makes a huge difference. Whereas in New Zealand, I know that the teachers have had a lot of struggles with fair pay and all this sort of thing. So sometimes they just
Mm.
get fed up with it, and it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work. I mean, I have the
Mm-hmm.
hugest admiration for teachers. I couldn't do that really, be with kids sort of, for all those 40, well, not quite 40 hours, but there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
hours that you have that
Yes.
face-to-face contact with kids. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, good points. It's
Yeah.
so wonderful when teachers are valued and they're really where they want to be, and then they can teach, they can do
Yes.
their job well and happily. And then the children benefit because the children get to learn from somebody who's being well taken care of.
Yeah, it's so important. And I find it crazy that, you know, historically they're one of the lower paid
Mhm.
professions because it's the most important. And you think back to your own teachers, and
Mhm.
there are always some which stand out as really nurturing you and reaching your full
Mhm.
potential,
Mhm.
and others who really kind of have the opposite effect. So yeah, it's really important. I know when I was at school in high school, and I had quite low self-esteem, and I wasn't that confident, and he really saw my English teacher it was, he really saw something in me. And I guess I'm quite naturally good at English and writing and that sort of thing, but I didn't really necessarily believe it. And he really saw something in me and nurtured me, and I worked to that, and I got sort of the top A+ or whatever in the year, which was it was an important year it was when I was 15. So that was really beneficial, but I know that I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had that teacher, because he nurtured me. He didn't push me as such, but he made me believe in myself. So I achieved
Mhm.
the results. And
Mhm.
isn't that what we want all teachers to do?
Mhm. Mhm. I also had a very good teacher. I mean, I guess a few of them, but the first one that came to mind was when I was in third grade. I was still very little, 8, turning 9. And this teacher, she was able to find the exact place where I needed to learn and then push me right there. And perhaps she was highly sensitive too. I don't know, but she was a very good teacher because she was attuned and she was willing to be attuned. And I was a very high achieving child. And the school was really struggling with me about what to do because I had done all of the grades, but I was still in third grade. But this teacher was able to find the place that I needed to grow. I needed to learn. I needed some support. And she just would nudge me. It was brilliant. It was so good. And it felt scary to be that child. Like, oh no, you can see what I don't know. Of course, I was so little still, but I had that experience like, oh, she can really see me. And she taught me. She really taught me.
Wow. Wow. Isn't that special? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I think our teachers, and especially at those young formative years, they make the biggest impact. And the fact that you
Mm-hmm.
can remember this so clearly, and even the feelings, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, 40 years on is incredible, isn't it? I only know that because we're the same
I
age.
know, I know. Right. It was 40 years ago. You're so right.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing for us to think that that's 40
Mm-hmm.
years.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
But I have to say, I love getting older. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's because we're still at that age where we're still young enough
Mm-hmm.
and things, but and our body's not giving in or anything. But
Mm-hmm.
I love getting older, and I'm kind of excited for turning 50 next year. And it's right
Mm-hmm.
at the end of next year because I'm a December baby. But
Mm-hmm.
it's exciting because it's wow, half a century. And we've sort of got this year to
Mm-hmm.
have as a bit of a goal, a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to do this before I'm 50.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
nice to have those little pointer marks, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. And I've never felt better, to be honest. Like I said, my dad said that I'm the same as well. As I get older, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and I think that is the case for a lot of highly sensitive people, is the more you grow and get older and also learn about yourself, the better you feel, and you realize that we're here in this world for a purpose. I mean, it's not by accident. I think that
Mm-hmm.
seems like there's more highly sensitive people in the world because I think these skills and these gifts are needed now more than ever. Just if
Mm-hmm.
someone said to me that, I don't know where this came from, maybe it came from a meditation they had or something, but they felt like, within 20 years, pretty much all the children being born would be highly sensitive people. It was probably a prediction. I can't remember who told me that, but I can imagine that will be the case,
Mm-hmm.
that's what the world needs, just people more tuned in. And when I watch movies like Avatar, it's kind of a bit like that, isn't it? It's just
Mm-hmm.
everyone's more in tuned, and it feels like if we go the right way, that's what the future of humanity will
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And when you were talking about school earlier in regard to your daughter, and sometimes there have been moments where school just didn't happen. And for me with my son, it was a new parenting moment for me because my son is often very excited about school. He really loves school. He loves his friends. He loves his teachers. He loves what he's learning. And so it was a very new experience for me to decide what to do with the anxiety he was experiencing, although I don't know if that's the word he would use, but he was having a lot of feelings that looked like anxiety to me, and choosing not to send him to school. So what I'm getting at is that there might be a shift in value. And I heard you beginning to talk about that around like, well, maybe it's not so much school that's important. There are these other ways of learning. And if we consider the highly sensitive person either being born more and more often or more and more people identifying this way, what might be the shift in value that could happen if we really honor the sensitivity?
I think just the emotional side of us, the spiritual and emotional side of us, rather than just, getting out there and doing things in the world. I know there was a study actually in the highly sensitive person book. Elaine Aron talked about a study which was done, I think in Canada, and they had a similar one done in China. And in Canada, the children were asked, I think they're between, I can't really remember now, but, elementary school children were asked, who would you want to be your friends? And it was more the confident, sort of stronger, tougher sort of ones who came out on top. Whereas in China, it was the more quiet, sensitive ones who people wanted to be friends with. So it's almost like in the East, a lot of the Eastern countries, these qualities are valued. And maybe it's because of that deep spiritual, history as well, that sensitivity can be seen as sort of wisdom and tuning into something else, rather than the physical world. So it's quite interesting. And I think growing up in these Western worlds, it wasn't valued as kids. It's like, come on, go, be tough, get out there, sort of thing. My son has his best friend, which was in New Zealand, and they're still very close. They just connect, online now, but he's always been very, very sensitive. And, even for school photos and this sort of thing, he'd sort of cry and wouldn't want to be out there when he was younger anyway. And, the teachers, I think these days they don't really shame kids for doing that. But probably in our day, it would have been much more like that. Kids get shamed for not being tough. Come on, toughen up.
Wow.
That was sort of the rhetoric, maybe in these sort of Australia, New Zealand sort of countries as well. It's like, toughen up, come on, drink a cup of concrete. And especially boys, I think, I think boys got it a lot. And I think it's still, that residue is still there, just toughen up and you can do it, get over yourself, sort of thing. And I know I grew up with a lot of that as well. But no, that's not necessarily the best thing.
True. Yeah. I was told often to get a thick skin.
Yes.
I was told to toughen up. I was very sensitive as a child. There was no stopping it, but I was told a lot of things.
Yeah. And I think it affects you as a child because you don't have any comparison and you think, oh yeah, there's something wrong. I mean, like I say, you think there's something wrong with you because you are like that, but it's a gift. And that's why it's so lovely that we can see who we are and we can pass that on to our children as well. Because it is a beautiful gift, which is in other parts of the world, it's revered and it's valued. So it's just moving that narrative, shifting that narrative, I think. But yeah, it's really about the internal. I think the value is really about the internal and connecting from the inside out with the world rather than just the outside,
Absolutely.
on a more physical level.
What are the kinds of things that are helpful for highly sensitive people at any age? What tips or tricks do you have?
Well, I think the biggest thing is understanding and validation. And I think if we do have highly sensitive children, I think that's the most important thing. And to give them a little bit of space. And like I said before, transitions are really difficult. So just working with transitions and finding a way with your child that you can manage that. I've heard some people find walking to school better because it gives that sort of transition time rather than jumping in the car and being there in 2 minutes and bam, they're at school, just finding little ways that'll work with your family. But yeah, I think understanding is key and just recognizing those triggers. I mean, if you're at a busy, chaotic environment and you're starting to get, affected by it and irritated by it. And I see this with my husband. He can't tolerate malls. He'd last like 20 minutes and he gets really irritated. So, we choose most of the time to not go with him, like if he wants to get something, he'll just go in and out. And if the kids want to do some more shopping or something, I'll just go with them. And I don't have a huge capacity for them either, but it's just about recognizing those signs. And even if you can't avoid those places, just working with it. So when those triggers arise and you start to get really irritated, you just remove yourself from the situation, I know
Mhm.
my kids, a big fundraiser here in Australia and New Zealand for schools are having discos, and they'll have
Oh.
these discos at night and the kids will dress up and go to these loud DJs and stuff. And a lot of the time my kids couldn't bear it actually. They'd go to one or two and then they'd opt out because it's just too noisy and
Mhm.
chaotic and it wasn't for them. And again, it's as a parent, it's not judging. Sometimes you think, oh, but you should really go probably because all your friends will be there and you're missing out on the social interaction. But yeah, it's not for them. It's not for them. And there's no point going to something which is loud and just going to be
Mhm.
irritable. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's as parents and also as looking after ourselves as highly sensitive people, it's getting rid of those shoulds, really. That's the biggest thing for me.
Mhm.
And a big part of something I've learned this year with my daughter as well, oh, but she should go to school. She's meant to go to school. And then it's like, look at her. She's so upset and she doesn't want to go. And why don't we just go home? She
Mhm.
can spend the day with me and I can fill her in other ways. Isn't that more important,
Mhm.
and to validate her feelings rather than just pushing her out of the car. And I tried all different things. I mean,
Mhm.
a couple of times I got frustrated and I yelled and, I wasn't perfect by any means. And I was trying to figure out the best thing to do. I wasn't really sure because, yeah, we get caught up in those shoulds.
Mhm.
And also it's about letting go of what's led you to that point. Like, but we've gone here, we've driven and we got up
Yeah.
early and, you've had your breakfast, you got your lunch in your bag, we've done all these things. And now we're here and you're not, oh, okay, we'll just drive home again. And we've beaten all the traffic to get here. Yeah. It's just letting go of that going, okay,
Mhm.
it's fine, it's
Mhm.
fine. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
What's the point of anything anyway? I mean, we're living this life
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
isn't those feelings the most important thing,
Mhm. Mhm.
of how she feels afterwards? Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you're sharing, Lydia. And I hear so much acceptance and honoring and truly a shift in value, meaning that at the very least, culturally, there is a different value. And what I hear you speaking of is no, pay attention to the person. Pay
Yeah.
attention to the person. What does the person need?
Yeah, it's so true. It's really about that. And it's always come back to that for me when you've gone to maybe certain people's houses and they're like, don't touch the walls, or telling your kids, don't touch the walls, don't do this. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about the environment. And I hated that. Like I was always with my kids, it's like, it's fine. Like, don't draw on the walls, but, just
Mm-hmm.
feel relaxed and enjoy a place. Enjoy material possessions are there to be used and enjoyed and not saved and protected, and
Mm-hmm.
things are not more important than people. And often you do see the opposite. People say, oh, don't touch that car, or be careful. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's been really important to me, especially in my parenting journey, that the child is so much more important than things or necessarily, other people's feelings aren't necessarily more valid than theirs just because they're older or something. It's funny how children are really can be really belittled, like, oh, they're more important because you're just little. And no, we're all the seed of a human being, and
Mm-hmm.
we're all important. And I think my kids have really gone that for me. If nothing else, they know that they're very valued as they are, and they're no less important than anyone else. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's quite a big thing, and especially growing up, yeah, in the sort of 70s and 80s, where often would be dragged, it's more parent centric and would sort of be dragged along to things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And whereas nowadays I think the child is considered a lot more than
Mm-hmm.
than when I was growing up. And I think that's important to me because I didn't, it lowered my sense of worth, I think, that I didn't feel seen and valued quite as much as I could have been. Yeah.
What a deep healing that is to value your children so much that they get the message, and the blessing that you have embodied for yourself gets passed on to them.
Yeah. Parenthood has been a deeply healing journey for me. It's really been
Mhm.
deeply healing. And yeah, what a beautiful thing. And I love that my children have similarities and that they're highly sensitive as well. So I can sort of do it differently with the knowledge and the tools I have available to help them get a better result. And of course, I'm not perfect. And I'm, like I say, with my daughter this year, I didn't really know. We get caught up in those limiting beliefs, but children should go to school, And of course, most of the time, we tried for that, and she did go a lot of the time, but then just letting it go. It's not the be all and end all, at the end of the day.
I am so grateful that I know you prior to this conversation. And I know that you are a meditator like I am. And so, are there any specific meditations that you find helpful for the high sensitivity that either works for you or people that you know that are highly sensitive?
I just think doing it with whatever works for you, just to do something every day, really. And sometimes we can overthink it. I quite enjoy, as I go to sleep, I like to have a more formal meditation. Like in the morning, I have a little bit of a yoga session, and then I'll do some meditating, then I'll journal. And that's my little ritual, which I've really made a non-negotiable this year. And anytime I don't do it, I really feel it. And my children feel it too. They know when I haven't been meditating, because I'm just more of myself, who I was meant to be, and not in that irritation sort of mind place. So yeah, it's my duty. It feels like it's my duty to do that every day. And in this season of life, it's probably not quite as long as I want it to be, but I try and go in with an open time frame, so it will just have its natural course. But also before sleep, I'm someone who historically has gone to sleep when I'm absolutely exhausted. Like I'll sort of stay up until I'm just falling asleep, and then I'm out. I hate that going to bed at a certain time, then sort of tossing and turning and trying to get to sleep. But I'm trying to change that a little bit and go to bed earlier, but put on a meditation. And I did your meditation the other night as I went to sleep. And it's the most beautiful thing. As I've said to you many times, you've got the most beautiful, soothing presence and voice. And yeah, to listen to one of your meditation episodes as you go to sleep is just the most healing, soothing balm. So yeah, to go to sleep with the meditation is really beautiful as well, I think. And we can all do that. We all go to bed. But I suggest even just sitting for 5 minutes, for even just a few minutes, just do something every day where you're just connecting within is super important. And I think especially for the highly sensitive, because that place is so important, tapping in. I think for everyone, but especially us, we need to connect to that place within us, because that's our source for everyone. But yeah.
Yeah. I feel the truth of what you're saying, and whether that tapping in is for connecting to that source or even integrating what's happening during the day. And I'm saying that while I'm thinking about my son, because he needs that alone time. And there are special things that he likes to do for himself. And if he doesn't get it, he's much more moody and much more difficult. I mean, he's an easy person, but it gets worse if he's not getting his time. And I think for him, and perhaps for some of us, it's that integration of the details of life that need a place to land and sort through and even get organized inside of the being.
Yeah, because life's coming at you, there's a lot of stimuli, as we know, and we're taking it all in. So we just need that time out just to recalibrate and get everything into order and to do it regularly. I mean, as often as you can. I mean, it's and the thing is, it's not a chore. Once you get into a practice, it's a beautiful way to spend your time. I mean, I love nothing better to do. There's nothing I'd more love to do than that. So yeah, it's just getting it into the habit, and that's the discipline, is making it a habit, and then it's beautiful. It's a delight.
There is so much more I could talk about with you and continue to ask and reflect on, and we also will wind down slowly but surely. So, what more would you like to step into that we've already shared? And maybe there's more you want to share, or something new that we haven't mentioned that is on your mind or in your heart that you'd like our listeners to know about?
Well, I guess it's about getting out there and just like this year has been a huge year of growth to me. And it's interesting, like I say, we're sort of winding up the year now. And I've just been reflecting back, and it's been a challenging year in a lot of ways, but it's sort of like night and day when I look back to, this time last year, we've done so much externally, but internally there's been such huge shifts as well. Yeah, we're literally in another country. We moved with 2 suitcases each,
Oh
me
my
and my
gosh.
kids, my husband. Yeah, it's quite amazing, but it felt so freeing. It's really amazing to do that. And even now, we're considering we might go back. My husband does sort of miss his family and friends, so we might go back temporarily to New Zealand. We're not sure, but it's quite beautiful at the moment to not actually know, just to really be living in the moment. And if you let it, there can be quite a lot of anxiety in that, but we're really not. I'm not. I don't know. Like literally in 5 weeks, we might be moving out of this house, getting on a plane and going back.
Wow.
So we really don't know. It depends on a few factors. My husband's applied for a few jobs, and it's kind of precarious, but it's also freeing, and it's kind of a sense of surrender to just, well, we'll just see what happens, and I'll be okay with that. I
Mhm.
have my preferences, of course, but yeah, just letting go and not fighting to have one way or another is quite freeing. So yeah, it's been a big year of growth and just navigating different challenges and changes. But that's how you strengthen, isn't it? I mean, that's how you
Mhm.
strengthen and grow, is through going through those things. And I wouldn't change anything.
Mhm. Mhm. I get the sense of adventure as you're talking about all of your moves. I mean, wow, Lydia, what will
It's
happen now?
I know. Well, or another thing is we would quite like to travel the world, and I mean that's quite why I quite like just being free of all our stuff. I mean, we're in another country, and we've set up, we've got beds and furniture and all that sort of thing. But it's about realizing that things, they don't hold us down. And I mean, most of the stuff's from IKEA. We can just get rid of
Mhm.
it and
Mhm.
go to another place and get more stuff.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
not being held down by that. I remember I used to work with someone. He was a single man. He was a bit older. He worked with me in the film industry, and he had great money coming in. He was free. He didn't have any partner or kids or anything, and he wouldn't travel or do all these great things because he just had so much stuff. His hobby would be going to flea markets and stuff, and he just would collect all these things. And he was in a rental home actually, but he just had so much stuff. So, oh no, I couldn't travel because I've got too much stuff. And it broke my heart and just made me feel awful. He wasn't a hoarder as such, but it was just so much stuff. It's junk.
Mhm.
It's other people's junk. Get rid of it, shed it, and
Mhm.
fly free. I mean, this was 25 years ago or something. And I really got the sense then. I thought, no way will I ever be like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you have children, you do get more bound down with stuff and material items and lots of gifts and things for the children and all this sort of thing. But they're at an age where we could let go of a lot of stuff. And we do still have some stuff in my parents-in-law's storage container, which,
Mhm.
and being here for a year, we realize there's very little we actually need now. So photo albums, really, that's probably the only thing I miss.
Mhm.
There's a few things like that, little mementos like photo albums, but everything
Mhm.
else, you get what you need wherever you go. It's
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
easy. And things
Mhm.
these days, material things are very inexpensive, I find. So yeah, it's that freedom is so liberating. And I understand now when people have said they just, like yogis, they'll just get rid of everything, they renounce everything, and they just
Mhm.
walk out there. And it is quite freeing, to not have a lot of stuff on your back.
Mhm. You're reminding me, Lydia, of one last thing I wanted to ask you about. And it's about when the highly sensitive person feels lost and
Mm.
how purpose and potential might come into play with that feeling of being lost. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts and wisdom about this.
So yeah, I've found that there's a lot of people I've come across who are highly sensitive people who feel lost and they don't know why, what the whole point of it is, why they feel things so deeply, and find it hard to be around other people. I see a lot of people resonating a lot more with their animals than humans. They find
Mm,
having pets a lot easier than a lot of people around them, but there's a lot of loneliness in that at times as well. You feel quite isolated and different, but I think it's knowing our purpose and who we really are. We are beings of love and light, and you know spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think to have that understanding is it all clicks into place and it all makes sense. So yeah, I think it's so important to get these messages out there and to reach the highly sensitive people so they can really see who they really are and see the amazing gifts which they have to share with others as well. But I
mhm,
think if you don't know that piece, or you're missing that piece, or you might be feeling that lack of self-worth and things from growing up feeling different and not being acknowledged and validated, then they feel other. And
mhm,
it's hard in that place to know that we're actually these divine beings, in a human body.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I've been really focusing on the highly sensitive people and reaching out, and with the hope that people realize who they really are. That's the main purpose for me, and to help them know their incredible inherent worth, which every human being has. But highly sensitive really have a special gift, a unique special gift, which others don't have as well. And that's here for a big purpose in the world too.
And in a nutshell, what would you say that gift is of the highly sensitive person?
To really, like your teacher, to see who people really are, to
Mm,
to know what they need inherently, just to feel, what someone really needs, and to help others and be there for others in a way that often gets missed by people who are more externally focused. Yeah, it's
mhm,
it's that feeling. And we all know when we meet people like that who feel us, they get us and they feel us on a deep level. That's, I think, one of the most valuable things we can have in life,
mhm.
to really feel like someone gets us. And yeah,
Absolutely.
highly sensitive people have that in spades. And as you do, I mean, you just make everyone feel relaxed and soothed and in that place, because you're being fully who you are. And yeah, it affects people. So yeah, just by embodying ourselves and being fully who we are and accepting it and knowing the worth of it is what changes the world and helps others the most.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your kindness, Lydia, and shining your light so beautifully and seeing the highly sensitive people of the world and valuing them so much, knowing that they have this wonderful innate purpose. I love that you're teaching what you're teaching and helping people learn and grow about themselves. Thank you.
And thank you for all you do. I mean, you're just a beacon of love and light. And yeah, just by you being fully who you are and putting that out into the world, it makes other people, like you said, like with your husband, it's just through osmosis almost, that we recognize who we really are and our gifts, and have that self-awareness, which is what we need more than ever, I think.
Where can everyone find you?
I've got a website for my coaching practices and different coaching programs. I have group coaching programs from time to time, and that's lydia-gilman.com. And you like a hyphen in between. Someone else has Lydia Gilman. some storage organizing person.
Oh,
So it's not fair. Who has that name? So yeah, it's Lydia-Gilman. And you can find my podcast, Stepping into Purpose podcast. And I've just launched this new shop, which is really about spreading a love revolution. Like I said, this knowing who we really are and what we're here to do in the world is so important to me. And I created this shop just with all these products, t-shirts and sweatshirts, and there's more products coming, but just sharing the messages of love. I think in a world that we have right now with the chaos and the conflict and things, just these passive messages of love and light just need to be out there. So we're almost like foot soldiers walking the streets just with these messages out there. So people can just clock them, just glance them and just take them in. And I think, it's just what I believe is the way to make the world a better place. And yeah, so that's lovetoat.com. And yeah, I'd love any feedback which anyone has, please. Yeah, it's a brand new venture, so I'm excited about it, but also wanting to receive any feedback because it's really about a community for me. It's about creating a community, and the products are one piece of it, but having this community and creating a movement is the biggest thing for me. So yeah.
It's a love revolution. I love this. I'm so excited for all you're doing, and Stepping into Purpose podcast is a wonderful show. I recommend everyone listen to it. And I am thrilled that you're helping our world transform in this way with such grace and honesty and self-awareness and self-acceptance.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I feel the same with all that you're doing. So thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate it. And I so appreciate just spending the time with you.
Thank you so much for listening. It has been a great joy to have your presence here in this podcast. I welcome you to celebrate the joy and wisdom in your life exactly as it is. And I welcome you to feel loved, fully loved, exactly as you are. www.rainelizabeth.org